Hi, I'm Heather Hubbard. I went from being a lawyer and partner at one of the largest firms in America to becoming an online personality and successful entrepreneur. I know what it takes to rise to the top. I also know all too well the toll it can take on your health and personal life. So, how do you shine bright without burning out? How do you chase joy while achieving success? You're listening to the Hustle and Flow podcast. Welcome back to Hustle and Flow. I am your host, Heather Hubbard, and we have a special guest with us today. So, pop quiz. What do Nike, Disney, IKEA, American Express, Mercedes-Benz, and Santa, yes, Santa, what do they all have in common? Well, Keka DasGupta has helped them with their branding and marketing strategies. She is a global keynote speaker. She has given a TEDx talk, and it's all about building unstoppable confidence, just like a brand. As she says, can you imagine having the self-confidence of a brand because you've never seen a brand with low self-esteem? No. So imagine if you had the confidence of Prada or Coke. That's exactly what Keka is going to help us with today. It sounds awesome. Keka, thank you so much for joining us on Hustle and Flow.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here, Heather. Thank you for having me.
All right, so let's talk about the marketing and the branding. I'm assuming that that is really where you got your start. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. My marketing career started 25 years ago. I was working in public relations and I was working in-house for IKEA, a Swedish furniture company. And it was one of those things where I originally got my start in marketing and public relations just from community and volunteer work. So I was 17 and I was writing press releases for community programs and I'd be interviewed on the local television, news outlets and whatnot. And then when I saw the job posting at IKEA for this PR position in the marketing department, I was like, oh my God, you can get paid to do this kind of work. And it had never occurred to me because I'd always volunteered for it, but I loved it. And that kickstarted a career that I've had over the past 2.5 decades where I've done everything from the public relations work to branding to integrated marketing. And there's always something new to learn and always something new to do. And I'm a lifelong learner. So I love that.
Same. I think a lot of my audience, they are lifelong learners as well. So let's learn a little bit about branding. Like what makes a good, strong, confident brand?
Love this question, Heather. So here's the thing. Most people, when they hear about branding, they think, oh, it's a logo, it's a particular color. Maybe if we go deeper, it's a particular font that I'm using in my materials. And while those things are part of a brand aesthetically at the face value of it, when you think about the world's most powerful brands, those brands are always delivering on a consistent promise. And so, whenever I've been in boardrooms and we're either building brands from scratch or we're maintaining brands like Disney or Nike that have such a strong presence, what you'll see from brands is they are super, super clear on the values that they embody because they want to attract customers and community that shares those values. They know what the cause is that they're fighting for. All of us have certain values that make the prompt us if we're on deadline on a crazy work project and we see something, let's say online, and it just doesn't work for us, we will stop everything and then go in and make a note, sign a letter, do something. And so there's always different causes or different sort of values that propel us to move forward for something. We fight for things. Brands are very clear on that. Like a brand like Nike is very clear on the fact that they are empowering people. Their whole tagline around just do it is just like, you can do it. We're going to be there to support you. Or a brand like IKEA, for example, that says we're going to bring beautiful design to everybody. We're going to make it affordable so you can have a beautiful life at home. That's what they fight for, is that beautiful quality of life when you come into your house and you're in your sanctuary and you're living a beautiful life. So all of us as people are our own individual brands. We all have our own brand DNA. So in the same way that you might go to ancestry.com or one of those sites to check out what your actual DNA is like, we have our own brand. We have the things that propel us. We have the things that we fight for. We are an experience to our friends and people that they have consistently. Brands do that consistently and say, every time you come to us, you're going to get the same experience. So whether you go into a McDonald's in New York City or you go to a McDonald's in Delhi, the experience of the brand is going to be consistent. And we are consistent like that, but most of the time we don't articulate it. It's just like an undercurrent in an ocean that keeps us driving, but we don't have the words for it. And that's one of the things that I fight for is I want people to recognize the magic they have inside of them, their personal brand DNA. And I always feel like we can take a page from some of the top brands around the world to see how they always know what they fight for. They always know who they are. They always deliver a consistent experience and they're proud of it. And they attract more people that have the like-minded perspectives. And so I think when it comes to us, we need to do the same thing. We need to recognize who we are because that's when we can bring the best of us to the world.
I love this conversation. Okay. So I have so many clients and listeners who own businesses. A lot of them are like professional service companies, or they run a business in general. And they often want to be very neutral. They want to be neutral in their values for fear they are going to push someone away or not attract someone. And I would like to hear, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, we've been often socialized in our community to want to please everybody. When we are going into school, if you get an A and you get a sticker from the teacher and it's like, great, you've done everything we've asked for. So we have that sense of conformity and that kind of desire to please that's been taught to us since we were kids. But I think that if we start to look at the people we admire the most, if you think about a celebrity or a historical figure or someone that you admire the most, are they the people that tried to please everybody? And are they the ones who have been most neutral and made everybody happy? Or are they the disruptors? Are they the ones that are going out and making change and fighting for what they believe in? I often give this example, the Super Bowl is, which just passed. The Super Bowl is a time where advertising as an industry often gets to showcase their best creative work. Well, you can go online and you can Google like the top Super Bowl commercials of all time or go by year. But if you look at those commercials, none of them are neutral. None of them are trying to make everybody happy. They are saying, this is who I am. Come and join me if you are like-minded. And brands do that too. If a Coca-Cola brand is out there and a Pepsi fan is there, they're not trying to win over the Pepsi fan. They're actually trying to make Coca-Cola fans even stronger, deeper, more passionate fans. So that people that might be neutral might go, what's going on over there? I want to be part of that. And this is the thing that I think a lot of people don't recognize or maybe might not know if you're not in the marketing industry, but rule of thumb in marketing is that when you are trying to go out and speak to a whole bunch of people, you want to speak to the people that have the closest values to you. So let's say, for example, I have $100 to spend on marketing and I am a woman's shampoo product that's made for curly hair. I remember you talking about curly hair and as we go. So now I'm a woman's shampoo, so I don't want to go out and spend my money on a general audience that's men and women because the men don't need my women's shampoo. So I'm going to take that part out. Then I'm going to have women who have straight hair or curly hair. This is for curly hair. I'm going to take the women who have straight hair out. Now I'm going to market to the people who have curly hair, but the ones who love a shampoo that they already have, and the ones that are not used to changing and don't like experimenting, and they love their one brand and they keep it there, I'm not going to market to them because I've only got $100 and I'm going to waste my time marketing to them. So I'm going to take my $100 and I'm going to specifically target women who have curly hair, who want a good product that's going to make a difference and are open to receiving something. So if you notice through that formula, at the end of the day, we are not trying to please everybody. And so we're only going after the people who we are made for, who would love what we have. And so for any entrepreneur out there who's trying to sort of keep everything fun, I would say, remember the disruptors in the world who we admire the most. They're often the ones that have the biggest impact. And most of us have come into entrepreneurship because we're trying to solve a problem. We're trying to fill a personal mission. There's something we're fighting for. It's not about keeping everybody happy. And then secondly, if you take a look at the foundational rules of marketing, marketing, you want to market to the people that are most receptive to your message. You're not trying to market to somebody who's not interested or opposed to your message. That's the way that you grow your brand, and that's the way you grow your business, is when you're speaking to people that say, hey, I want in on this. That's what community building ultimately is about, right? Connecting people that want to be connected with each other.
I have so much I want to unpack. This is the best conversation. Okay. I was writing notes because I'm like, I'll totally forget what I want to follow up on. But I want to go back to this Pepsi Coke comment because I think that like there's probably a lot of minds being blown at the moment and they're like, oh, wait, you said Coke is not trying to convert a Pepsi loyalist. They're trying to, if I understood correctly, they're simply trying to make their biggest fans feel like they belong to something and that they matter. And will that, eventually bring a neutral party over? Maybe. But it's really about continuing to love upon and create that loyalty with the people who already love them the most. Is that right?
100%. Yes. You captured it
Okay.
perfectly, Heather.
Okay. So I feel like so many of us, it's so sometimes, right, it's about the people pleasing, but it also reminds me of like positive and negative comments. It's
Mhm.
like so easy to forget who the people are. It's like reinvesting. It's so much easier to get a repeat client than it is to get a new client. And
100%.
sometimes it's like we get so focused on trying to get more market share that we fail to recognize that we could probably get all the work we need if we just double down and really invest in the people who are already working with us.
Yes, absolutely. And in marketing, one of the things we often talk about is a halo effect or a surround sound effect. So the idea is that if you cultivate passionate brand fans, so you might have a small group of people that absolutely love you, they become your ambassadors to the circles around them. So the people that might be on the fence and go, oh, I don't know, they hear my message on a podcast, and then they come across something on social media, then they might come to my website, or they might have a really good friend say, oh my God, you've got to check this person out. Like when you start to hear it from many people, then you have a higher level of influence with the people that are sort of in the middle. And you're not wasting your dollars on the people who are like, don't want it, not interested. I'm a Pepsi fan for life. That's all. You're not going to change my mind. Then you're just wasting dollars. You're kind of throwing money at a wall because people aren't interested. But if I love Coca-Cola and I'm drinking Coca-Cola all the time and I bring my friends in and I serve Coca-Cola to them and I talk about how this brand is amazing and doing incredible things. Did you know that these bottles are 100% recyclable? Whatever the case may be. Now, instead of just Coca-Cola being that one voice amplifying into the world, every single fan is also amplifying. And we all know the positive impact of compound interest, right? This is really
Yeah.
compound interest in brand fandom.
Yes. I love this. I always say when I started out my business, I used to try to convert people. Like I was like, here's why this matters. And then I got to the point where I was so resentful and frustrated. I was like, why am I trying to convert people? And that can be a strategy, but it's not my favorite strategy. I was like, how about I just help and support the people who already get it and who are already all in, but just want more help and support. And
Yes.
ever since I shifted my perspective on that, one, I get like people, I just attract people, right, who I
Yeah.
enjoy working with more, and they probably enjoy working with me more as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And for your listeners who are perhaps just starting out in their brand and say, okay, I don't have a group of fans that already love me. We all start from somewhere. Amazon started somewhere. Apple started in a garage, right, with Steve Jobs. So for the people who are starting their empire and don't have that, what I would say is what you want to do is you want to connect with the people who share your values. So speak to the customers who share the same values as you, because that's who we naturally connect to. When you look at your closest circle of friends, usually it's a group of friends where you all have something you value in common that's brought you together. And as you were saying, Heather, when you attract customers, this is what brands do. They become magnets that attract the people that are right for them. So when you stand in your own personal power, I like to call it your personal brand confidence, when you stand in that brand like confidence, people will naturally be attracted to you, the ones who share those values. And that's where you start to build those really passionate fans. And when you keep cultivating with those passionate fans, that group gets bigger and wider with time.
All right, this brand like confidence, because this was the thing I wanted to come back to. All right. So when we were talking about some people are neutral, they're trying to please everybody, they don't want to put their values out there for fear that it will turn off maybe one of the few clients that they do have or whatever else. It occurred to me self-esteem because it assumes that you can't find people who actually share your values, right? Isn't that like I was like that's a scarcity mindset, and I know you're all about this self-esteem concept. So I'm like, wait, if you're neutral, that actually means you have low self-esteem, right? Am I thinking of that wrong or
It can be, and it's yeah, I think that it's in the pattern of thinking comes from that scarcity and that low self-esteem. It might be there for one particular thing. It might be that you had an experience in some place where you were rejected, and so then you don't want to displease people. It's complex in
yeah.
terms of why people think this, but for anybody who's feeling trepidations about taking that step and being who they are, there's a couple of things that I would stand out to say. Um, when I'm working with a brand in a boardroom, or I'm working with a leader and looking at a CEO's personal brand and how it fits in with the brand of their company, here's the thing: you get to make the rules of what you want to share in the world. So if you have a particular viewpoint that isn't necessarily going to be popular with society and culture, there's nothing to say you are going to be forced to stand there and, what's it called, a bullhorn, like
Yep.
shout that out to the world, and the darts are going to be thrown your way.
Right.
You get to choose what parts of you want to share. So what I would start with is think about who your ideal customers are. Why would they be interested in you? What values do you share from the beginning, right? So as an example, I'll give you an example. When I started my professional speaking career, I was a mom. I wanted to help young kids with self-esteem. I saw a lot of bullying at different schools, and I was like, I want to do an anti-bullying program. That's important to me because self-esteem is a central part of what I want to help people have. Um, but there's many bullying programs out there that are teaching kids how to be an upstander. And when you see bullying, what are you trying to do? What are you trying to say? How do you report it? And I knew that that's not the place and the space I wanted to play in, or I wanted to work in, because I know for myself, I'm a natural optimist. I like to look at things from a positive perspective. I like to shine things in a positive light. I was at a networking event yesterday, and someone said, "Wow, look at your smile. You're really happy." And I thought, I don't know if there's something particular. I'm happy. I'm just happy to be here. And I took it as a lovely compliment. So I wanted to work in a space of positivity. So instead of I'm using the bullying sector, I guess, or suppose, like, the topic of bullying obviously is something I'm fighting against, but my choice was to say I want to prevent bullying. So I want to add positivity into school environments so that we can mitigate the bullying. So I often, with kids, I'll show them a cold glass of water and say, in a bullying environment, the glass is cold, the environment is cold, you don't feel good, but your challenge now in this little science experiment is you can't touch the glass, you can't move the glass. How do you change the temperature of the water? And most of the times, kids will say you add hot water to the glass. And I'm like, yes, exactly. So if you add positivity into it, you can change it. That's where I want to stay, and that's where I want to stand. So, we live in an increasingly polarized world today. With social media, we tend to, and the algorithms help us to do this. We go into the corner of what we love, and anybody else who has any opposing opinion, we're going to unfriend you and unfollow you,
Yeah.
we're going to cancel you. And so naturally, people feel nervous to go, I don't want to put something out for fear of me being canceled. But instead of focusing on where you don't want to be, what I would ask your listeners to do is focus on where you are and where you do want to be and where you want to make a difference, and then double down on those values and then share that. Why is that value so important to you? Is
Mhm.
there a story? Often our greatest strengths come from our pain. What is that pain point? What is the lesson you learn from that? What can you forward to other people? And what happens then is you can go into topics that you feel safe about and you
Mhm.
feel good about talking about and you feel passionate about talking about, and you don't have to put yourself out there vulnerably in a place where you feel like you're going to be attacked. You make the rules and you get to show who you want to be in the world. And so I think it's just, let's take out the rules and the pressure and just find What lights you up? I had a friend who was really good at this. You know, she would watch her friends, and I was lucky to be one of them, where she would notice when topics changed from one thing to another. And I'm sure you've seen this among your friends too. You know, you're having a conversation and suddenly someone lights up about a particular conversation and their body language changes and they sit up straight and their voice gets more animated. You know that they're passionate about something when they do that. So if as an entrepreneur, you're not quite sure, what do I fight for? What are my values? I don't know. Ask some of the people around you that are closest to you to watch you, because we subliminally change, like subconsciously our body language is changing. We often don't notice it. But if someone can mirror that back to you and go, oh my God, what you just said now, did you notice how your face lit up? Chances are the person on the receiving end will be like, it did. But there are
Right.
clues
Yeah.
in there, right? Yeah.
Yes. I love this. This is so good. So does this specifically connect to the concept of having brand like confidence, or is that a little bit different?
No, it is definitely, it is all in the same bucket. And the reason why I talk about having brand like confidence is that most of us in the world, I would say the majority of us, especially in North America, if you said, do you have a favorite brand? Most of us will have a brand we either admire or we really like what they're doing or we like their product or their service and go, yeah, well, yeah, I love that brand. And the one thing that we do in our society is we give brands carte blanche to promote themselves. So imagine, you know, it's a hot summer day and you're coming into a park and there's a Coca-Cola. I'm just going to go with Coca-Cola. There's a Coca-Cola activation happening where you can, sample some product. What are you going to see in something like that? You're going to see a sea of Coca-Cola Red, the specific Pantone of Coca-Cola Red you're going to see. You'll see this bottle silhouette that's trademarked everywhere. You'll see the logo mimics step and repeats everywhere. And everyone's dressed in the Coca-Cola colors, and all of the customer experience personnel are like, come on in and try this. And Coca-Cola is everywhere in that activation. Do any one of us ever say, oh my God, Coca-Cola is so full of itself? Did you see how it's bragging everywhere about it? No, we don't, right? We go, I love Coca-Cola. Look at what they're doing. And we appreciate the confidence that brands bring in who they are. And yet, all the work I do in corporate companies, and it doesn't matter what level, like from frontline personnel right up to the top CEO, one of the top challenges that we find in workplaces is people don't want to come across as egotistical. They want to be
Mhm.
confident, but they want to be quietly confident so that you just happen to notice me. And yet, most of us are exposed to over 10,000 marketing messages a day. So we're not intuitively just reading people and we're expecting
Yeah.
people to read us that way. So when I talk about having that personal brand confidence, that brand like confidence, it's the idea that think about your favorite brand and think about how confident that brand is in itself. And if you're giving permission to the brand to be that confident, we should be that confident about ourselves. Now,
Yeah.
can I share one thing with you, Heather, in this conversation?
Please.
My parents instilled in me, they were an immigrant family that came into Canada, and they instilled in me always never have an ego. Like my dad was just so opposed, never ever have an ego. The ego is the worst thing you can have. And for a long time as a youngster, I was like, so I need to be confident, but I can't have an ego. And it felt like those two conflicted. Right? So I need to be humble. I don't want to have an ego, but then how am I confident? And I never understood that. And then a few years ago, there was a Qigong teacher, actually, a teacher who I was talking to about this, and he clarified it for me in the best way possible. He said that when you have confidence, it means you believe in yourself and who you are as is. You're not trying to be anybody else. You're not competing with anybody else. You're not putting anybody else down because it doesn't matter. You are standing in who you are, and that's your confidence. When you have an ego, it means you're competing against everybody else. You're trying to get above everybody else. You're trying to convince people that you're already above when you're not really above everybody else. And you're trying to climb that pedestal. And essentially, you're trying to be something you're not. And that's
Mm.
the difference. And my mind was blown. And I was like, I can be fully confident, like every brand I see that's admired around the world, but I don't have to have an ego. And that's the difference. When you come into a workplace, if you're managing your team as an entrepreneur, you can have that confidence. You can instill the confidence in your team and say, we're not competing with anybody else. We are competing against ourselves to better our best. And we can love who we are as we are in this moment and just keep growing. And then suddenly all of the, oh my God, I'm so egotistical, and oh my God, I'm something I'm not, the imposter syndrome can go away, because it's not part of this particular formula. So I want people to think about their favorite brands and think about how confident those brands are. And whenever they're in a moment where they're like, oh, I shouldn't be as egotistical, I don't want people to think anything, think about your favorite brand and stand in your own power.
I love this because it reminds me a little bit of like there's a saying that annoys me, which is, and I'm a very competitive person, but not in the way that I think a lot of people think. But one of the sayings that I hate is crush your competition. You're a
Yeah.
keynote speaker too. So like,
Yeah.
right, like we hear this a lot. Like people
Mhm.
love to talk about crushing the competition. I'm like, good Lord. Like you don't have to crush them. Like maybe just be your best version without
Yeah.
taking out everybody else. And so that's kind of what it reminds me of. It's like this egotistical macho, like if I'm not the, I've got to be the best.
Yeah.
There's not any room for anyone else. And I love that you're saying, no, that's not what a lot of brands do and what they look like. They're very confident in who they are and who they serve, and they're not bashful about helping others, I
Yeah.
think so many times people are worried that like they're going to bother someone. You know what I mean? So, like, sometimes it's ego for sure. And then sometimes it's like, I just don't want to bother anyone, like I don't want to impose on someone.
Mhm.
And it's like you have such wonderful things to offer the world. It's not imposing upon them to offer that. It's a gift to share
Yeah.
it. And it's only if you are then like trying to force them to do something does it then become, annoying. But just
It's
sharing your
so
gifts.
so true, Heather. I'm a recovering perfectionist. Let me just come clean,
Same.
right? Still working on it every day. But, I grew up wanting to be perfect because I wanted to please people and earn that sticker from my grade school days. But, one time as I was embarking upon this speaking career, I had somebody say to me, well, I said, I haven't mastered this yet. I need to really get it perfect and then I'm going to share it. And oh my God, I was in a conference with like a room full of 300 people, and he was like, "May I challenge you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." So there I'm standing with 300 people around me, and he said, "You are being intensely selfish." And it was like a hushed silence and then a gasp from everybody in the room. They were like, "Can't believe he just said that to Keka." And he said, "You are being intensely selfish because right now, in this very moment, there are people all around you that need to hear what you have to say because you can help them. But God forbid you want to think you need to be perfect and you are waiting and you are not sharing what you need to share in order to be perfect. That is incredibly selfish because you're thinking of yourself first and preserving yourself." And I mean, honestly, like the whole room was like, "I can't believe he just said that. I can't believe he did that to you." And, at the end of the conference, he came back and he was like, "Truce, are we friends?" I'm like, "Yes, of course we're friends." But he made me think about the fact that I was putting my needs and, truth be told, my fears ahead of what I felt was so important that I wanted to share. And I saw another speaker. I'm part of the Canadian Association of Professional Speakers. So I'm lucky to, just be around incredible human beings that are speaking and inspiring people all around the world. And this gentleman was talking about how he was going into prisons and speaking to inmates, and he is a motivational speaker, exceptional speaker. And he said that one day, I'm paraphrasing from my memory, but he said one day he had gone into one of the prisons and he was sharing his speech, and this one young teen who was in the prison came to him and said, "Where were you? Where were you 6 months ago when I needed to hear this? Because I didn't. You're sharing this with me here, but I needed to hear this 6 months ago because my life would have been completely different if you had been there 6 years ago. Where were you?" And hearing him share that story on stage, like honestly, it still gives me shivers as I think about it. It was so impactful to think about the fact that we're in this, like, we're going into entrepreneurship because we want to help people in some capacity. And when somebody comes and says, "Where were you? I needed to hear this message 6 months ago." if I keep that front and center in my mind that the people I'm trying to help need to hear me today, and I owe it to them to put myself out there, it becomes easier to tell the fear that's trying to protect us, like, okay, Keka's fear, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you're trying to protect me, but I'm just going to ask you to sit here quietly because I'm doing this anyway. And I'm doing this because people need to hear it. We need to have that belief, and we need to give more credence and power to that innate whisper inside of ourselves and say, do this, go, take the risk, make it happen. We need to think that through and remember that we have magic inside of us that we need to give to other people. And as a
I
brand
love
marketer, I
that.
can tell you for 25 years with people that I've worked with from all walks of life, every single one of us has magic inside of us. And often we don't see it. If you don't hold a mirror up, you don't know what you look like, right? So we often don't see it. We have to know it's there. And that's often the magic is what propels us. We have to really embrace that. That is about embracing your personal DNA confidence and feeling confident like a brand.
Yeah. I love this. And I love the perspective shift of when I'm doing something, if I'm being assertive or, whatever, whether you are at work, in a big company, or you own your own business and you're marketing to your clients, everything it's helpful to think of it from the perspective of how can I be of service to others? How can I
Yes,
be in service to others? Because so often I think with people pleasers, sometimes we can, you know, we're trying to like not bother them when, yeah, it's like, but you're actually withholding. And so being able
yeah,
to make that shift of saying, I want to be in service. And what is in service to my company? What is in service to the clients? What is in service to the people? It can really, I think, help you process what you're going to do and say in a different way.
absolutely. And, for any entrepreneur who feels like the sales process is icky, like, I'm asking too much, like there's a lot of us that have been socialized to like not ask for something. So when it comes to the sales, that final closing part, okay, here's the price, here's what we're going to do, people feel nervous about it. I was in some sales training once and I heard this and I never forgot it, and they said, okay, let's say for example you have the world's best chocolate chip cookie recipe, like bar none. Everybody who tastes it absolutely loves it. They're like, oh my God, I can't get enough. And this is what you have. It's like the world's greatest recipe. And on social media, just as an example, in our marketing, you're sharing a little bit. Oh, I buy my chocolate chips from here. Here's a secret ingredient that really makes it great. You might even make some samples and give people little morsels of it. And then when people are ready to buy the cookie, because this is the best cookie they've ever tasted, you kind of hide away. Oh, well, I don't want to be selfish. And oh, I don't want, and you withhold from your audiences the world's best chocolate chip cookie. Would that make any sense at all? Are you helping your audience at all by hiding that final cookie for them to buy?
It's just
No.
rude.
It's just rude, right? Exactly. And so think about the fact that what you are offering to the world, there is so much value in it. You know it because that's why you got into entrepreneurship. Or if you're in a job and you're doing some work, you know and you believe that this is going to make a difference. It's why you're doing it, right? If you believe in it and you know how powerful it is, why wouldn't you share it with the world? So that's the thing, is that we have to have confidence in ourselves first and confidence in what we're offering as a product. Again, think about Prada, think about Nike, think about the confidence they have in their products. And then remember, when you are reluctant to share that with the world and you're kind of like, oh, but I don't want to be salesy, imagine, no, I cannot hold back the world's greatest chocolate chip cookie recipe. People need to experience this, and put it out there with confidence.
Yeah, I mean, Tory Burch is my favorite brand, and if they were having a sale or had something new that came out and didn't tell me about it, I would
Right.
be like, "Do you not care about me? Like, I wanna know."
Exactly. Exactly. And we don't often even recognize or even know how much people love what we offer. And so we have to believe it and share it, ask for feedback, and then really intentionally take that feedback in. Too often we autocorrect in our head. I've found this all the time when people would come to me after a presentation and say, that was phenomenal. When I was doing a lot of school presentations, I have kids coming up to me going, thank you so much. You changed my life. And my autocorrect in my head goes, you're just a kid. I didn't change your life. Like, that's very sweet. That in my head, in person, I'm saying, oh, thank you so much. But in my head, I'm like, oh, that's so sweet. You're such a sweet kid. And I'm autocorrecting and I'm not taking that in. And that was something I realized over time. I'm like, wait a minute, if somebody is coming and saying that, who am I to discount their feelings and their feedback? And so we have a negativity bias that are built into our brains, right? So we're wired to look at danger and look at what's wrong, and we give so much more attention to things that are negative. Like one negative comment, and people like freak out over that. I'm human. I do the same thing. I'm like, oh my God, but why? But why would they think that? Meanwhile, 98% of the other comments are amazing. And so we do have the power to shift our focus and spend it on where we know we're making an impact and make that message bigger in our minds, sort of combat the negativity bias with intention, because that's really, again, when we know the impact we're sharing, we're going to want to do more of it all the time.
That reminds me of a lot of times, especially when people are just getting started. But if they don't really like the publicity part or the marketing part, they can look at how many people are unsubscribing, who exactly is unsubscribing, how many likes they're getting, how many comments they're getting, how many, like the response. And kind of like I was mentioning on the Tory Burch, they probably send me 99, for every 100 things they send me, 99 I'm actually not interested in, but I still want them to send it to me. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
not that I don't like them. So just because I'm not engaging doesn't mean that I'm actually not interested. And I do think that we create these stories in our head and this, negativity bias of, oh, if people aren't liking or commenting, I would like big brands, they're paying attention to, I would expect, like how things are trending. So if like people were opening and now they're not, what happened? Like they're not getting into the nitty-gritty of why did Heather not open or comment on this particular thing? Oh my gosh, she must hate me.
Yes. It's so true, and one of the things that I share with entrepreneurs when we have these conversations is, first of all, look at your own habits. How many times have you seen a post on social media and said, "Oh, that's so nice," and then you just keep swiping, right? And you just keep going because you're busy. We don't have time. 10,000 messages a day is what we get bombarded with. Our brains are not equipped to handle that, so we naturally protect ourselves, and it's like, okay, we just go, we go. So if you do that for the things that you love and you keep skipping over, people naturally do that. The other thing is, an important thing for us to realize is that in today's world, we have to remember that what we see on social media are people's highlight reels. And that's okay, but it doesn't mean that people aren't having their own challenges. I remember this one person who, in a community that I'm part of, had said, there was some ongoing friction between her and a colleague, and she said, well, this lady, she checked out a message on social media. I could see that she checked out that message on social media. She didn't respond to me, but she posted a whole bunch of other things on social media, so clearly she's ignoring me. And I'm like, okay, she might be ignoring you. First of all, you don't know. Secondly, we don't know what's going on there. Like, I tell you countless times, I'm like, on the way I'm taking my kids to school, I open Facebook for the sake of it. I open Instagram for the sake of it, see one thing quickly. Okay, I'm going to respond. Close it. And then I don't respond for another few hours because I'm doing something else. Or, sometimes we just energetically don't have the bandwidth to be able to go and have a conversation that might feel difficult. It's way easier to post something that makes you feel good. I'm doing it for the moment. So there's complexities in our ecosystem of communications that we often consider as black and white. We know that the world is filled with many shades of gray. So when we see black or white on social media, we have to recognize that there's so much else going on in people's lives that we have no idea. So, the thing that I always ask entrepreneurs to focus on is set up your goals. What are the goals you want to go after? And then it's formulaic in terms of, okay, if I want 100 passionate followers, then I know that I might get 500 initially, and then we're going to get some drop-offs, and then ultimately we're going to get the 100 that are really passionate. Know your metrics, know your goals, know what you have to do that, and understand that that line to success is never straight. It is never straight. It is squiggly and it goes up and down and everywhere.
Yeah.
And if we just remind ourselves of that, then the unsubscribes, the negative comments, all of those can just fall off because it's part of the process. Once we recognize that all of that is just part of the process to build powerful, passionate communities, then it's like, okay, no problem. We'll just keep going because we know we're expecting this to happen.
Yes, we know what we're doing, who we're serving, and who we are, right? I
Yes.
love it. Okay, Keika, I could talk about this all day long. I'm loving this conversation, but I see we're at time. So, for those who I know we've got a lot of people who actually hire speakers, will you just share with everyone kind of a little bit about what you do and where they can find you if they want to learn more?
100%. Thank you, Heather. Yeah, so I keynote and I offer training. I love doing this work. To me, it's like my soul's work. I'm passionate about this. I go into a lot of corporate companies, conferences, and then I also speak at schools. The grades are usually like 6 onwards, so elementary, high school, and then college and university. But my message at the end of the day, whether I'm talking to someone young or someone talking to somebody old, a CEO or a grade sixer, it is all about finding that brand like confidence inside of yourself and then applying that to everything you do. So often what happens is, when we're hiring people in our work, we are betting on our employees, right? Like, I'm hiring you because I know you're going to do a fantastic job. I'm putting my money on you. I am betting on you. Are your employees betting on themselves? Because most of the time they're a little waffly. And I help to build that confidence and give people tools that they can use in moments of uncertainty that help them stand in their confidence. And then that has a cascading impact on workplace culture, profitability, school environments, and positivity, and all of that stuff. So that's what I do. And if you want more information, I would just invite people to check out my website, which is artoflifing.com, ARTLIFEING. That's a word I've made up. .com. And it
Yeah,
came from the idea of adulting. We were like, oh,
yeah,
look at me, I'm
yeah.
adulting. Well, I want to be lifing. I want to live life on purpose and on my own terms. And I can only do that when I have confidence in myself. So yeah, check out my website and just connect with me on social. Keka is an uncommon name. So if you do Keka and lifing, you're sure to find me on Google.
You so much, Keika, for coming on. It has been an absolute pleasure. Everyone, go follow Keika and let's build some brand like confidence. Thank you so much for joining me for this week's podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, give the episode a like and leave a comment below so we can keep the conversation going. Also, be sure to subscribe to the channel so you never miss a future episode or announcement. Listening on Apple, Spotify, or another podcast app, you can watch the video and join in the after show conversation by visiting hustleandflowpodcast.com.